Hello, bedtime thinkers, and welcome to the Bedtime Discoveries. I'm so glad you're here tonight. This is a place where science becomes soft and gentle, and each story helps you drift into peaceful rest. Tonight, we'll be exploring the gentle story of our own species, the slow, winding, fascinating journey of human evolution. From small beginnings in Africa to the connected world of today, this is not just a history lesson. It is the story of us all. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Please share in the comment below. It helps us feel connected to cross-time zones and across the world. And if this calming journey brings you comfort tonight, please gently press the like button, and if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the Bedtime Discoveries so that more sleepy science journeys can find their way to you. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a vast African landscape, a place of warm golden light, where grasslands stretch as far as the eye can see, where clusters of trees sway gently in the wind, and the sound of distant rivers flows like a soft lullaby. It is here in Africa that our story begins, not in crowded cities, not in stone castles or shining towers, but under open skies millions of years ago. Scientists often call Africa the cradle of humankind. The cradle is the first resting place, the gentle place where new life begins. And for our species, and for the many species before us, Africa was that cradle. If we look back far into deep time, we find that the earth itself was already very old. 4.5 billion years had passed. Oceans had formed, mountains had risen and eroded. Countless animals had lived and vanished long before the first human ancestor appeared. But in this long timeline, somewhere around 6 to 7 million years ago, something remarkable began to stir in Africa. In forests and grassy plains lived creatures that were not quite apes and not yet human. They were small, they climbed trees, but they also walked on 2 feet, at least some of the time. This moment was like the first step, a quiet beginning, to a story that would take millions of years to unfold. Archaeologists and paleontologists, those who study the bones of the past, have searched Africa carefully, and they have found fossils, small skulls, jawbones, and fragments of leg bones that tell us about these early beings. One of the oldest known is called Sahelanthropus cadensis, discovered in Chad, in Central Africa. It lived around 7 million years ago. Its skull was small, about the size of a chimpanzee's, yet the shape of its bone suggests that it might have walked upright, at least partly. Then a little later came Ororantugenensis from Kenya, around 6 million years ago, and then Ardipithecus in Ethiopia, about 4.5 million years ago. Each of these ancient beings carried within them the spark of something new, something that would eventually lead to us. Imagine them moving quietly across the African savannas, small groups, mothers carrying children, gathering fruits, nuts, and roots, using sticks to dig, and watching carefully for predators. They were vulnerable yet resilient. They learned where to find water in dry seasons and where to hide from the big cats. Africa gave them challenges, but also gifts. The shifting climate, the changing landscapes, forced them to adapt again and again, and each small adaptation became a stepping stone toward the humans we are today. Scientists call this long story human evolution. but when spoken softly, it feels less like science and more like a dream of survival, of persistence, of slow and gentle transformation. So, as you listen tonight, let yourself drift into the wide African skies and feel the beginning of our journey, a journey that starts right here in Africa, the true birthplace of humankind. Picture Africa once again, but this time let the land shift and change. The forests grow thick, then thin. The grasslands spread wide, then shrink back. The rivers flow strong in one age and fade in another. For millions of years, Africa was never still. Its climate moved like a slow tide, sometimes warmer, sometimes cooler, sometimes wetter, sometimes drier. And each change was like a gentle hand, shaping the lives of our earliest ancestors. Scientists call this environmental pressure, but to imagine it in softer terms, we might think of it as nature's quiet guidance. When forests thinned, creatures that once swung through trees had to walk further on open ground. When the grasslands grew, they had to learn which plants were safe to eat and which animals to watch for. Over time, walking upright became more useful. 2 feet instead of 4 meant they could see over the tall grasses. It meant they could carry food or even a child while still moving across the plains. It meant they could use their hands to hold sticks, stones, or simple tools. This was not a sudden leap, but a slow, gentle unfolding, like a flower that opens its petals, one small movement at a time. And Africa itself was like a great teacher. It offered both hardship and opportunity. If rains failed, survival meant seeking new places. If predators prowled, survival meant working together. Through such trials, bonds formed, and intelligence grew. One example of this story comes from the Rift Valley in East Africa. This great rift, stretching through Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania, is like an open book of Earth's history. Here, layers of stone hold the remains of ancient beings. Every fossil found is like a quiet voice calling from millions of years ago, saying, "We were here." And what do these voices tell us? They speak of creatures slowly learning to live beyond the trees. They tell of beings balancing between 2 worlds, the forest and the savanna, the past and the future. For example, in Ethiopia, the fossils of Ardipithecus ramidus were found. Ardi, as she is sometimes called, lived about 4.4 million years ago. Her skeleton shows she could climb trees with long, grasping toes, but also walk on 2 feet when she needed to. Ardi's world was a mixture of woodlands and open spaces. Her body was shaped by both. This gentle balancing act was repeated again and again through generations beyond counting. And here lies the beauty of Africa's role. It was not simply the birthplace, but also the forge, a place that tested life and reshaped it until only the most adaptable survived. From these trials came creatures that could not only endure, but thrive. Creatures who looked up at the stars, who felt the rhythm of the seasons, who began slowly to wonder. And in these earliest stirrings of awareness, we see the very first glimmers of humanity. If we follow the trail of time, from the first upright steps to the lives of beings like Ardi, we arrive at another layer of Africa's story, a story written not only in bones, but also in footprints. In northern Tanzania, there's a place called Litoli. There preserved in ancient volcanic ash. Our footprints left behind about 3.6 million years ago. They are small yet unmistakable, the footprints of beings walking upright, side by side across the soft ground. Imagine them, two or perhaps three individuals, walking after a rainfall, the air still carrying the scent of wet earth. Each step pressed gently into the mud, and the volcanoes have sealed them like a time capsule. For millions of years, they lay hidden until scientists uncovered them, like whispers from the past, saying, "We walked here." These footprints belong to Australopithecus afarensis, a species we will meet in the next keynote. But here in the origins, they remind us of something powerful. They remind us that our ancestors were not just bones in the ground, but living beings moving through their world, as real as you and I. And as fossils continue to be discovered, the picture of our beginnings grew clearer. Tiny teeth, fragments of skulls, pieces of pelvis and femur bones, all told the same story, that Africa nurtured a wide family of early humans. This family was not a straight line, but more like a branching tree. Some branches grew for a while, then ended. Others split and grew new forms. And one branch, slowly, carefully, led to us. What's remarkable is not only how they lived, but how they adapted. They lived through shifting climates, encountered new animals, and faced dangers we can hardly imagine, and yet they survived. Take a quiet moment to picture them. Small groups huddled around at night, watching the glowing eyes of predators in the dark. Mothers soothing children, elders guiding the young to waterholes. They did not know that they were the beginning of something vast. They only knew that they must keep living one day after another. And because they did, because they walked, gathered, adapted, and passed on their knowledge, we are here tonight, listening to their story. So when we say the origins of humankind are in Africa, we are saying something more than science. We are acknowledging a deep truth that this great continent is the motherland of us all. No matter where you live today, no matter the language you speak or the culture you cherish, if you trace your ancestry back through time, it will always lead you home to Africa, the cradle of humankind, the first chapter in our story, the gentle beginning of the long, winding path of evolution. Close your eyes and imagine a world about 3.5 million years ago. The African plains stretch before you. Warm winds brush against tall grasses, and scattered trees cast gentle shadows on the ground. Here, among this landscape, lived a small creature, neither quite ape nor quite human, but something in between. We call her Australopithecus. The name means southern ape, and though her body was small, her role in the human story was enormous. Perhaps the most famous of them all is Lucy. Her fossil remains were discovered in 1974 in the far region of Ethiopia. When scientists pieced together her bones, they realized they were looking at something extraordinary. Lucy walked on two legs. Her pelvis and legs made this clear, but she still had long arms and curved fingers made for climbing trees. She was only about 3.5 feet tall, light as a child, yet she carried within her the balance of two worlds. Imagine Lucy's world. She would spend part of her day walking upright on the open ground, searching for fruits, seeds, and roots. But when danger approached, perhaps a lion or a leopard in the grass. She could still climb quickly into trees, finding safety above. This way of life, both on the ground and in the trees, was the secret of her survival. Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy's kind, lived in groups. Living together meant protection, and it also meant sharing food, caring for young ones, and perhaps even communicating in simple ways. We don't know what sound they made, but perhaps soft calls, chirps and hums, echoed across the savannas. The beginnings of social bonds were forming in these ancient beings. As we drift with Lucy through her world, we begin to see how human life was taking shape. It was fragile, yet full of possibility. Each small step, each careful adaptation, was like a quiet drumbeat, carrying the rhythm of evolution forward. Let's linger a while longer in the world of Australopithecus. Imagine a dawn when the sun rises soft and golden over the grassy plains of East Africa. A small group of Australopithecines emerges from a cluster of trees. Mothers carry infants on their hips. Juveniles tumble and play in the dust, while adults keep a careful watch for predators that lurk nearby. Food is always a concern. They do not farm. They do not store. They gather day by day. Wild fruits, tender shoots, seeds scattered on the ground, perhaps insects dug from logs, or even marrow cracked from bones left by larger hunters. To imagine their lives is to imagine simplicity and struggle, yet there is also resilience. They adapt to what the land gives them, moving when water dries, seeking shade when the sun grows harsh. Their bodies were built for this world, short and sturdy, with strong arms for climbing and hips designed for upright walking. This combination made them flexible, able to live in both forest and savanna. And while we may see them as primitive, in their world, they were experts. They knew the paths of animals, the places where fruits ripened in season, the rhythms of rain and drought. Knowledge passed silently, from elders to the young, and perhaps, just perhaps, they also felt emotions like we do. A mother's grief at losing a child, a young one's joy in play, the comfort of closeness in the group. We cannot know for certain, but their eyes, their hands, their bones tell us they were not so distant from us as we sometimes imagine. Their challenges were many. Large predators roamed freely. Saber-toothed cats, hyenas, crocodiles at riversides. Without weapons, they relied on numbers and on vigilance. Night must have been a time of unease, when the darkness carried the growls of unseen hunters. But together, huddled in groups, they endured, and in enduring, they carried the story of humankind forward. The most magical traces of Australopithecus are not only their bones, but their footprints. At Litoli in Tanzania, a series of footprints stretches across ancient ground. They were left about 3.6 million years ago by Australopithecus afarensis. Two adults, perhaps with a child, walked side by side across a plain coated in soft volcanic ash. Rain had moistened the surface, and as they walked, each step pressed into the earth. Later, new ash fell, sealing their journey forever. Today, those footprints remain, the oldest direct evidence of beings walking upright with human-like gait. To stand before them is to feel a hush, a reminder that these beings were real, that they once walked as we walk now. Their legacy is not measured in grand inventions, but in persistence. For nearly 2 million years, Australopithecus lived, adapted, and survived. That endurance was a foundation upon which later humans would rise. Some species of Australopithecus eventually disappeared, their branches ending on the evolutionary tree. But their memory lives on, not only in fossils, but in us. When we look at our own hands and feet, when we take a step across the ground, we are repeating movements that Australopithecus first refined. Their story teaches us patience. That change does not happen in an instant, but in slow, steady steps. That survival depends on flexibility, on learning to live with the world as it shifts. And as we drift toward Resinite, we can let their quiet lesson guide us to be gentle, to be adaptable, to remember that even small steps carry us forward on the long journey of life. Let us drift to a time about 2.4 million years ago. The African landscape is still vast and wild, but something is quietly changing. Here we meet Homo habilis. His name means handy man, and he is remembered for one of the simplest yet most powerful steps in our story, the making of tools. Imagine a small group of Homo habilis. Their bodies not so tall, only around 4 feet in height. Their arms still long, their faces still ape-like, yet in their eyes the spark of curiosity glows. Where an Australopithecine might only pick up a stick, Homo habilis picks up a stone, and with patience strikes it against another. Flakes break away, leaving behind an edge, sharp and useful. This small act of striking stone against stone may seem simple to us, but it was revolutionary. For the first time, our ancestors were not just using nature's tools. They were shaping them. A sharp stone could cut through meat, scrape hides, crack bones to reach the rich marrow inside. These new foods meant new energy, and that energy nourished a growing brain. Here, we see the start of a deep connection. Hands shaping tools, tools bringing food, food feeding the brain, and the brain imagining new ways to shape the world. This gentle cycle of hand and mind was one of the great turning points of human evolution. And though Homo habilis may have seemed small, his tools made him powerful. Predators still prowl the land, but with stone flakes and gathered sticks, this little being could carve out a space for himself. In a world of giants, let us wander softly into a day in the life of Homo habilis. It is morning. The air is cool, the sun just rising above the plains. A small group huddles together, sharing warmth, sharing safety. Slowly they begin to move, seeking food, water, and shelter. Some carry simple tools tucked in their hands. They do not farm, they do not plan far ahead, but they live with awareness of each day. Perhaps they find the remains of an animal left behind by lions the night before. With sharp stone flakes, they cut meat from the bones. They carry pieces back to share. For the first time in history, food is being processed, divided, prepared, not simply eaten raw as found. And with these meals, brains grow. Compared to Australopithecus, Homo habilis had larger skulls, a sign that intelligence was rising. This did not mean language yet, but it meant memory, problem-solving, and the beginnings of culture. Imagine them sitting together at dusk, gnawing at meat, sharing roots and berries. Children play nearby, watching the adults' movements carefully. They learn by imitating, by watching how stones are struck, by observing how food is shared. This is the dawn of teaching, and the first sparks of tradition. though their voices may not yet form words like ours. They likely had simple calls and sounds, perhaps gestures too, pointing to food, warning of danger. Every sound, every glance carried meaning. Life was still fragile. Danger came from predators, from drought, from injury, but with sharper tools, stronger groups, and growing intelligence, Homo habilis began to tip the balance, ever so slightly in his favor. And in that quiet shift, the long journey of humanity gathered strength. The story of Homo habilis is not one of grandeur, but of subtle, enduring change. He did not build cities. He did not paint walls with art, but he planted a seed, the seed of technology. Every tool he made was a whisper forward in time, a whisper that said, "We can shape the world around us." And that whisper echoed into every species that followed. Homo habilis lived in Africa, among rivers and lakes, forests and plains. The tools he left behind are still found today. Simple flakes of stone, edges chipped by ancient hands, resting quietly in the earth, waiting for modern hands to discover them. When archaeologists lift one from the soil, they are holding the first human invention, not just a stone, but a story. Though his life was short, though his body was humble, Homo habilis represents something vast, the turning of thought into action, the power of imagination, taking form in stone. And so we remember him as the handy man, the first toolmaker, not perfect, not yet human in the full sense, but a dreamer in his own way. As you listen tonight, perhaps you too can feel the rhythm of his hands, striking stone against stone, sending sparks of thought into the future. Every invention we have today, from the smallest spoon to the tallest skyscraper, is rooted in that first spark, in Homo habilis, in his patient hands, and in his enduring spirit. This was his gift to us, passed down through millions of years. And even now, when you hold something shaped by human hands, you are holding a distant echo of that ancient moment, the moment when the first tool was born and humankind took its first true step toward becoming who we are. Close your eyes and picture the African plains 2 million years ago. The sun glows warmly. The wind stirs across tall grass, and on the horizon walks a figure taller, stronger, more confident than those before. This is Homo erectus, the upright man. Compared to Homo habilis, his body is different, taller, sometimes reaching nearly 6 feet, with long legs built for walking great distances. His stride is steady, purposeful, and with each step, he carries humanity further into the world. Homo erectus was the first true traveler. He did not stay in Africa alone. Step by step, generation by generation, his kind journeyed outward, across deserts and rivers, into Asia, into Europe, and eventually across vast landscapes stretching thousands of miles. Imagine them moving in small bands through unfamiliar lands, the first humans to look upon mountains they had never seen, to hear the crash of waves against new shores, to set foot in forests untouched by any before them. Why did they travel? Perhaps for food, perhaps as the climate shifted, perhaps driven by curiosity itself. Whatever the reason, they spread farther than any human ancestor before them, and with their movement came adaptation. They learned to live in many environments, warm jungles, dry plains, even colder regions. Their bodies, strong and resilient, carried them through. Homo erectus was not just surviving, He was exploring. And in that exploration, the map of humanity began to stretch wide. Among the greatest gifts of Homo erectus was the control of fire. Imagine a night millions of years ago. The sky is dark, filled with stars. Predators prowl at the edges of the grassland. A small group of Homo erectus huddles together, and at the center flickers a flame. The fire crackles softly. Its light dances across their faces. Its warmth shields them from the chill of the night. The animals, who once crept close in darkness, now keep their distance. For the first time, humans held power over light itself. Fire was more than warmth. It was protection. It was a gathering place. And it was food. With fire, meat could be cooked. Cooking made food softer, easier to chew, and far easier to digest. This meant more energy and more nourishment for the brain. And so, just as stone tools had fueled Homo habilis, fire fueled Homo erectus. Imagine the scene. Children staring into flames with wide eyes. Elders telling simple stories through gesture and sound. The first moment of community woven around the hearth. Night, once filled with fear, became a time of safety, a time for sharing, a time for dreaming. This mastery of fire was one of the great leaps forward. Not sudden, not perfect, but a gentle unfolding that gave humans a new way of life. And with fire came vision, a vision of possibility, of shaping not just tools, but the very elements. It was a step closer to the humanity we know today. Homo erectus did not stop at fire. He became a master of tools as well. His stone tools grew more refined, shaped into hand axes with sharp, symmetrical edges. These were not just chance flakes, but carefully crafted instruments, showing foresight, patience, and planning. With such tools, he could cut wood, butcher animals, dig roots from the earth. Each tool extended his reach. Each invention a step forward in survival. Life was still difficult, but Homo erectus endured longer than any human ancestor before him. For nearly 2 million years, he walked the earth. No other human species lasted so long. His endurance tells us something about resilience, about balance with nature. Homo erectus was strong, but also adaptable. He did not conquer every landscape, but he lived within them, learning their rhythms, respecting their challenges. And when we look at ourselves today, we carry his legacy still. The long stride of our walk, the cleverness of our hands, the spark of fire in our hearts, all whisper of him. Though Homo erectus is gone, his spirit lingers. Every time we gather around a fire, every time we share warmth and food together, we are echoing his life. He was the traveler, the fire keeper, the tool shaper, the one who stretched the human story across continents. And as we drift into rest tonight, we can thank him gently for his strength, his endurance, and his vision. For without Homo erectus, the road to humanity would never have stretched so far. Close your eyes and imagine a quiet valley in Ice Age Europe, snow covering the ground, cold winds moving between tall pines. There at the edge of a cave, a figure stands. Broad shoulders, strong arms, a heavy brow shading thoughtful eyes. This is a Neanderthal, not a stranger, but a cousin, a fellow human, who shared the earth with us for hundreds of thousands of years. The Neanderthals were born in Europe, their bodies shaped by the cold. They were shorter and stockier than Homo sapiens, built with strength to endure icy winds and heavy winters. Their lungs were wide, their noses large, their hands powerful, and yet behind those strong bodies lay minds capable of imagination, compassion, and community. For so long, Neanderthals were thought of as brutish, primitive, less than human. But discoveries tell a different story, a softer story. They made tools. They cared for their sick. They buried their dead. Imagine a winter night. A small group huddled in a cave. A fire flickers. The smell of roasted meat fills the air. Children play with stones. Elders carve tools from bone. These were not beasts. They were families. And for thousands of years, they thrived, from Spain to the Middle East, from cold forests to dry plains. They made their homes. They faced hardship, but they endured. Neanderthals were not a side note in evolution. They were a proud chapter, one that lingers within us still. When we look deeper into the lives of Neanderthals, we see more than survival. We see humanity. Their tools were not crude. They shaped stone into scrapers, blades, points for hunting. They used fire to harden wooden spears, crafting weapons for close, powerful hunts. And with these tools, they hunted great animals, woolly mammoths, bison, reindeer. It was dangerous, but they worked together. Their strength multiplied in unity. But Neanderthals were more than hunters. They were artists. In caves in Spain, red ochre marks the stone. Handprints, lines, symbols left behind. Were they decorations, messages, or the first stirrings of spiritual thought? Perhaps they gathered around firelight, marking stone with color, telling stories in the flicker of flame, and they cared. Archaeologists found skeletons of Neanderthals who had been injured badly, yet lived for many years after. Someone must have tended to them, shared food, offered comfort, protected them. This reveals something quiet and deeply moving. Neanderthals had hearts. They felt bonds. They looked after one another. And in their caves, in their camps, we see the first evidence of burial. Bodies laid with care, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with tools. A sign, perhaps, of love, of memory, of a belief that life continued somehow. This was not the act of a brute. This was the act of a human. And so, when we whisper the name Neanderthal, we should not imagine a savage. We should imagine kin, brothers and sisters in an ancient world. But then, a new wave of humans came. Homo sapiens, our ancestors. For a time, the two species lived side by side. In Europe, in the Middle East, their paths crossed. Did they fight? Did they share? Did they look at each other with fear? Or with curiosity? The truth may be a mixture of all. There may have been competition for food, for shelter, for land. But there was also connection. For science tells us we are not separate. When humans and Neanderthals met, they mingled. They shared not just tools and fire, but families. They had children together. Even today, in the DNA of modern people, Neanderthal blood runs quietly, a whisper in our genes, reminding us that they are part of us still. And yet, the Neanderthals faded. Around 40,000 years ago, their numbers dwindled. The reasons are many. Changing climate, competition with Homo sapiens, perhaps even illness. But slowly, their fires went out. Their caves grew silent. And the last Neanderthal laid down to rest. But were they truly lost? No, for in our bones, in our faces, in our very breath, they linger. Every time we gather in warmth, every time we care for one another, every time we leave art for the world to see, we are echoing them. The Neanderthals were not failures. They were not a mistake. They were a branch of humanity, strong and beautiful, who walked the earth with us. And as we whisper their story tonight, let us honor them, not as shadows of the past, but as part of our family, part of our journey, part of our heart. Close your eyes and imagine the plains of Africa about 300,000 years ago. The air is warm, the grass sways gently, and in the distance walks someone familiar, not a Neanderthal, not Homo erectus, but something new, a being with a lighter frame, a rounded skull, a face we might recognize in a mirror today. This is Homo sapiens, the wise human, our species, our story. Their bodies were slender, built for endurance, for walking and running long distances. Their hands, nimble and precise, could craft with great care. And most of all, their brains were unique, not larger than all who came before, but differently wired, capable of imagination, of creativity, of dreaming what did not yet exist. At first, they lived quietly, hunting, gathering, sharing fires under African skies. But in their minds, a spark was growing, a spark that would change the world forever. This spark was the ability to see beyond survival, to wonder, to plan, to invent. It was the birth of human thought as we know it. And so, in the heart of Africa, our story began. The beginning of Homo sapiens, the beginning of us. What set Homo sapiens apart was not just their bodies, but their minds. They could picture things not yet real. They could imagine a hunt before it happened. They could design a tool before it was made. They could tell a story about things unseen, things long past, or dreams of the future. This gift of imagination became their greatest strength. With imagination came art. On cave walls, hands were pressed in red paint. Animals danced in ochre and black. Symbols were carved in stone. Was it magic, a way to honor the hunt, or the birth of beauty for its own sake? With imagination came belief. They may have looked at the stars and wondered about spirits, about ancestors, about a world beyond their own. With imagination came invention. Tools of stone grew sharper, more complex. Spears were crafted with precision. Eventually, bows and arrows and new ways of shaping the world. And with imagination came community. Homo sapiens shared stories, songs, rituals. They created bonds not only of blood, but of culture, groups larger than families, united by shared beliefs, shared symbols, shared dreams. This power to imagine, to connect minds together, was unlike anything seen before. It was a gentle force that would carry humanity forward. And so, around campfires, in caves, beneath endless skies, the humans of long ago began to build a new kind of world, a world shaped not only by nature, but by thought. Close your eyes and imagine a group of early humans gathered around a fire, the night air cool, the flames dancing, shadows flickering across their faces. Someone points toward the forest. Someone else mimics the movement of an animal. At first, communication was gestures, expressions, simple sounds. But then something remarkable began. Words, soft syllables, gentle sounds, strings of meaning woven together. A way to say not just here or there, but why, how, and when. The birth of language was the birth of connection. With language, a mother could warn her child. A hunter could plan with the companions. A storyteller could share the memory of an event long after it happened. And slowly, language shaped thought itself. It gave humans a way to capture the invisible, to hold on to ideas that otherwise would vanish like smoke in the wind. Imagine a hunter saying, "There will be deer by the river tomorrow." It seems simple, but it means so much. It means the ability to speak a time, of future, of possibility. Language was not just a tool. It was a doorway into imagination, cooperation, and the shared world of human minds. As language grew richer, so too did community. Groups could grow larger, bound not only by family ties, but by shared stories, shared plans, shared dreams. The first languages are lost to us now. Their sounds vanish in the wind of time, but their spirit lives on in every word we speak today. As language blossomed, so did something just as wondrous. Art deep within caves. Humans left behind marks of themselves. Red and black pigments formed the shapes of animals, hands, and mysterious symbols. Imagine the scene, a flickering torch carried into the darkness, shadows moving across rough stone. A hand presses against the wall, pigment blown around it, leaving a silhouette. A human presence reaching across thousands of years. Why did they make these images? Perhaps to honor the hunt, perhaps to teach the young, perhaps to call upon spirits, or simply because they were moved to create beauty. Art was not limited to walls. Beads were made from shells, bones carved into delicate shapes, ochre rubbed onto skin. Humans began to adorn themselves, to show identity, to carry meaning. Art gave humans a way to express what words could not. The awe of the hunt, the mystery of the night sky, the rhythm of life itself. And when music appeared, simple flutes carved from bone, drums made from skin, voices raised together. Art became sound, a heartbeat of culture. Language and art together wove the fabric of humanity. Through words and through images, humans reached beyond survival into something deeper, a search for meaning, a love of beauty, a recognition of wonder. With language and art, humans built something invisible, yet stronger than stone. Culture, stories carried across generations, songs remembered long after the singers were gone, symbols painted on walls that spoke across thousands of years. This was the true power of Homo sapiens. Not just tools, not just fire, but the ability to unite minds. Through shared imagination, through language, humans could create myths, tales of ancestors, of spirits, of creation itself. These myths bound communities together, giving them identity, strength, and purpose. Through art, humans could carry emotion, the curve of a painted bison, the echo of a drumbeat, the handprint on stone, all whispered a feeling of connection, of presence. And together, language and art became the seeds of everything to come. Science, religion, music, literature, all these grew from that first spark. Imagine an ancient night, a circle of humans by firelight. One tells a story in words, Another sings softly. Another paints by flickering light. All are joined together, hearts beating as one. That was the moment when humanity truly became itself. For language and art made us more than survivors. They made us dreamers. They made us creators. They made us human. And tonight, as we speak softly of them, we too join that long chain of voices, stretching back through time, whispering to one another in the darkness of night. Close your eyes and imagine the world about 12,000 years ago. Humans walk as they had for countless generations, gathering fruits and roots, hunting wild animals, moving with the seasons, always traveling, always searching. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was the human way. Small bands wandering together, sharing food, sharing stories, never staying long in one place. But then something shifted. A seed fell into the earth, and from it grew possibility, perhaps by chance, perhaps by observation. Early humans discovered that plants could be encouraged to grow, that seeds could be saved, that food could be planned, not just found. The first gardens were simple: wheat and barley in the Middle East, rice in Asia, maize in the Americas, sorghum in Africa. Each seed a tiny miracle, a promise of food tomorrow. With this discovery, humans began to change. Instead of wandering endlessly, they stayed. They cleared small plots of land. They tended plants. They waited for harvests. And with farming came animals. Wolves grew close to campfires, slowly becoming dogs. Goats, sheep, cattle, and pigs were tamed, providing milk, wool, meat, and companionship. This was the dawn of the agricultural revolution, a gentle turning point when humans began to shape nature, and in turn, nature shaped them. They were no longer just wanderers. They were becoming settlers, builders of villages, keepers of fields, dreamers of stability. And with each seed planted, the roots of civilization sank deeper into the earth. As farming grew, so too did settlement. No longer bound to constant movement, humans built the first permanent homes. Imagine a small village, mud brick houses clustered together, smoke rising gently from hearths, fields stretched beyond, green with crops. Animals wander nearby, watched by children. Here, for the first time, families could stay in one place. Food was stored, shared, protected. The rhythm of life was tied to the rhythm of the seasons. Spring brought planting. Summer brought growth. Autumn brought harvest. Winter brought waiting. And in these cycles, a new kind of life unfolded. Population grew. Villages became towns. Communities became larger than ever before. With larger groups came new needs. Rules to share resources. Leaders to guide decisions. Rituals to unite people. And slowly, culture deepened. Pottery was shaped, both for storage and for beauty. Woven cloth appeared, threads of color binding people together. Trade began, as one village exchanged grain for stone, or shells, or tools. These were small steps, gentle but profound. The agricultural revolution was not sudden, but over centuries. It reshaped every part of human life. The wanderers of the past had become settlers of the present, and the seeds they planted were not just of wheat or rice, but of society itself. Yet with farming came both gifts and challenges. Life grew more stable, but also more demanding. Farmers worked long hours in fields, bending, planting, harvesting. Their bodies carried the marks of labor. Diet grew reliable, but less varied. Health sometimes declined, even as communities flourished. And yet, despite hardship, the path was set. The agricultural revolution opened doors no hunter-gatherer band had ever known, for with farming came surplus, more food than one family needed, and surplus meant freedom. Some could spend less time farming and more time crafting tools, shaping art, building homes, or leading communities. Surplus gave rise to specialization, to creativity beyond survival, to invention, and soon villages became towns, towns became cities, and the first civilizations rose. The fields and flocks of early farmers were the foundations of temples, markets, and empires. This revolution also tied humans ever closer to the land. Seasons were watched with care. Stars were mapped to guide planting. The heavens and the earth were studied as never before. And though farming bound people to labor and risk, it also gave them vision, a vision of stability, of growth, of a future shaped by human hands. The agricultural revolution was not just about food. It was about identity. It was about the moment when humanity began to imagine permanence. And from that moment onward, the story of civilization was set in motion. Close your eyes and picture early humans standing on a shore, the waves washing against their feet, the horizon stretching endlessly ahead. They had begun in Africa, their first home, but their journey was far from over. Step by step, generation by generation, they moved outward. Some crossed the Middle East, following rivers and grasslands. Some turned north into Europe, where icy winds swept across open plains. Others drifted east into Asia, where great forests and mountains awaited. These migrations were not rushed. They unfolded slowly, over thousands of years. Families traveled together, seeking food, seeking safety, perhaps seeking something new. And wherever they went, they adapted. In cold places, they wrapped themselves in furs. In warm jungles, they learned to gather fruits and fish. In mountains, they crafted tools to endure the heights. Humans became wanderers, not of one land, but of the entire world. And the earth, vast and varied, became their canvas. Imagine those first footsteps, pressed into snow in Siberia, into sand in Arabia, into volcanic soil in Indonesia. Each footprint was a whisper of courage, a mark of presence, a promise that no place was beyond human reach. As time passed, humans faced new challenges, rivers to cross, mountains to climb, oceans to navigate. But their minds, curious and inventive, found a way. They built rafts and simple boats, paddling across waters that separated islands and shores. In Southeast Asia, they reached faraway islands, settling in places where no other humans had ever lived. And in time, they made their way to the vast continent of Australia. Imagine the courage it took to push away from land, to ride across unknown waters, to arrive in a world of kangaroos, giant lizards, and strange plants. Later still, humans pressed into the frozen north, across a land bridge that once connected Asia and the Americas. They crossed into a new world, Step by step, they spread southward through forests and plains, mountains and deserts, all the way to the tip of South America. The earth itself became a home without borders. From the highest peaks of the Andes to the endless tundra of the Arctic, from the deserts of Arabia to the islands of Polynesia, humans reached them all, and with each arrival, they brought stories, songs, and dreams. Every land became woven into the great fabric of humanity. As humans spread, their worlds grew many, yet their story remained one. In Africa, people lived under the heat of the savannas. In Europe, they painted deep caves with animals of Ice Age plains. In Asia, they built traditions of hunting, gathering, and early farming. In the Americas, they adapted to both forests and deserts, mountains and grasslands. On Pacific islands, they sailed by the stars, navigating with wisdom of sky and sea. Each environment shaped its people. Skin tones shifted to match the sun. Bodies adapted to heat, to cold, to altitude. Languages blossomed, each with its own rhythm, its own way of holding thought. Cultures grew, each rich and unique, yet all human, though separated by oceans and distance. All were connected by the same beginnings, the same ancestors, the same shared spark. And even today, as we look across the globe, we see the echoes of that spread, the diversity of faces, the music of countless languages, the patterns of art and tradition, each one a reflection of the journey outward of humanity's courage to walk into the unknown. The global spread of humans was not just about geography. It was about becoming many, yet remaining one. It was about carrying a single story into countless voices, countless lands, countless dreams. And tonight, as we reflect on their journeys, we can feel a quiet connection. For no matter where we are part of that great migration. We are the children of travelers, the heirs of wanderers, the dreamers of the earth. When we speak of evolution, it is easy to imagine it as something finished, a tale that has already been written, with our ancestors in the past, and ourselves at the end of the line. But the truth is softer and more mysterious. Evolution is not over. It is not a story closed with a final page. It is a river, still flowing, still shaping, still carrying us forward. For even today, our bodies, our minds, our lives are changing, minute by minute, generation by generation. The story continues. Think of how we live now, surrounded by cities, machines, and technology. Our ancestors once hunted antelope with sharpened stones. We, in contrast, stare into glowing screens, fly through skies in metal wings, and voyage even beyond the atmosphere. This new environment is unlike any faced before, and just as the heat of savannas once shaped darker skin, and the cold of the north shaped lighter features, so too does the modern world whisper changes into our genes. Take our diets, for example. In some parts of the world, humans developed the ability to digest milk into adulthood, a trait called lactose tolerance. This adaptation arose because farming communities relied on cows, goats, and sheep in other parts of the world where milk was not part of the diet. This trait did not spread. A simple difference in food became a difference written into the fabric of the body. Or consider high altitudes where air is thin and oxygen scarce. In the Himalayas, in the Andes, and in the highlands of Ethiopia, human populations develop subtle genetic changes that help them breathe, live, and thrive where others might faint or struggle. These are not stories of the distant past. They are still happening, still shaping us. Every new environment, every new way of life offers a gentle hand of evolution to guide the future of humanity. So when we say modern evolution, we are not just looking backward, but forward too, into what we are becoming. The story of modern evolution is not only in our biology, but also in how we have changed. The forces that once ruled us for countless millennia, nature alone decided who survived, who thrived, and who passed their traits forward. Diseases, predators, harsh climates, these were the sculptors of our early selves. But now we have changed the rules. Medicine, with its gentle hands, carries the weak through sickness, saves the newborn who once would not have survived, and allows lives to blossom in ways the past never knew. Technology shelters us from extremes of weather. We build warm homes where cold once claimed lives. We create clean water systems where thirst once threatened survival. We even build machines to breathe for us, to see for us, to carry us farther than our legs ever could. All of this changes. The flow of evolution, traits that once meant life or death, are now softened. A child born with fragile health may still grow strong, thanks to medicine. A family that once might have struggled in harsh winters may thrive thanks to heating and shelter. This does not mean evolution has ended. It only means that the forces shaping us are now different. Instead of predators and climate, we face new sculptors. Stress, lifestyle, pollution, diet, and technology itself become the quiet hands that write in our genes. And beyond this, there's something new still, something our ancestors could never have imagined. Genetic science. For the first time, we are learning to read and even write the very code of life. We are beginning to edit genes, to cure illnesses, to prevent inherited diseases, to shape the human future with intention rather than chance. It is a strange thought, both wondrous and unsettling, that the story of evolution, once told only by nature, may now be guided by our own choices. So where does this story go? What does modern evolution mean for the future of our species? Some scientists believe that our bodies will continue to adapt in subtle ways. Perhaps our immune systems will change as we face new viruses and new environments. Perhaps our brains will adjust to the constant flood of information and the glowing presence of screens and networks. Others wonder if technology will not only guide us, but merge with us. Already we carry devices that extend our memory, that link us across continents, that shape how we think, work, and dream. What if one day the line between human and machine becomes softer, blurred, woven together? And farther still, what if humans leave this earth? What if we settle on Mars or on distant moons? The air, the gravity, the light of other worlds would press upon us, slowly shaping new branches of humanity. In time, Our descendants on another planet might look different from us, adapted to their new home, yet still sharing the same ancient spark. In this way, the journey that began in Africa, that spread across the earth, may one day spread across the stars. It is humbling and it is soothing to realize that we are part of something so vast, so ongoing, so quietly magnificent. And yet, through all the change, one thing will remain: the essence of being human, the capacity to wonder, to love, to dream, to tell stories under the night sky. This is what evolution has gifted us. Not only bodies that adapt, but minds that imagine. Not only survival, but meaning. And so, the story continues, written in the silent language of DNA, shaped by the world around us, carried forward by every child born, every life lived, every dream dreamed. And now, dear listener, we have walked together through a long, winding path, from the first origins in Africa, through Australopithecus, through Homo habilis and erectus, through Neanderthals and sapiens, through language, art, farming, migration, and the modern story of evolution. It is a journey of millions of years. Yet tonight, we have held it softly in our hands, like a quiet flame. Wherever you are, whatever time it may be for you now, I wish you peace and rest and gentle dreams. May your night be calm. May your sleep be deep. And may you carry this story within you like a lullaby of the earth. Good night, dear traveler. Good night, dear dreamer. And goodbye until we meet again under the stars.